stories of origins, remember the definition of a religion, rival stories of origins, rival judgments about the meaning of human life, rival sets of moral dictates, and above all, what theologians call rival eschatologies, pictures of the future and of what lies ahead for humankind. Wow. Very fascinating. I completely agree with Michael Ruse. Well, what about this idea of separation of church and state? Did you know that doesn't even appear in the Constitution? It does appear in a letter by Thomas Jefferson to a Baptist pastor in Dayton, Danbury, a pastor in Danbury, Connecticut in 1802. This whole idea of separating church and state originated with the Baptists in Rhode Island because they had gotten persecuted by the Congregationalists, the Puritans, in Massachusetts. And they said, we're not going to do that to anybody else. We're going to have a separation of church and state. And the whole point was not to keep creation out of the classrooms. The whole point was to keep the government out of the church. To keep the government from stepping into the church and saying, here's what you can teach and what you can't teach. And it wasn't the separation of church and state. There is no such phrase in the Constitution. Rather, the Constitution has what's called the Establishment Clause. Here's how it works. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So the established religion in Massachusetts was Puritan Congregationalism. That was the religion. And if you came along as a Baptist, they persecuted you. Because this was the state religion. It was the established religion. The established religion in England was Anglicanism. And so they could persecute the Methodists and the Quakers and the Baptists. See, and the Moravians, because they were Anglican, and you're going to baptize your kids this way, and you're going to respect the Anglican hierarchy. See, and so the U.S. Constitution says no, there would be no establishment of religion. Question: if I teach life only comes from non-life, I mean life never comes from non-life, have I established a religion? Have I?
No.
No. If I teach a Big Bang cannot create a fine-tuned universe, have I established a religion? No. If I say these fossils can't gradually form because they'll rot or they'll get scavenged, they have to happen fast in a catastrophic, like a flood or something like that, have I established a religion? No. Right? I'm giving you scientific facts. So that's my whole point, is we should be able to teach creation in the schools. In fact, the Declaration of Independence, which was written by some of the same fellows that wrote the Constitution, says this: we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, right? And it's our Creator that gave us our inalienable rights. Okay, we talked about the history of the controversy, the limitations of science. I got one more point, and just so Henry stays awake, let's all stand up, turn around, just shake hands with somebody or wave to somebody, just stretch, stand up, everybody stand up, stretch. One, if I had all kinds of power and could do whatever I wanted, I would like to see it taught with two models. We have the creation model and the evolution model. Both are philosophical worldviews. Neither one is hard science. Neither is observable today. They're not susceptible to scientific method. But they are models that we could look at and see which is most reasonable, which is best supported by the available evidence, and evaluate them to see which is the more reasonable model. And frankly, I think that would be able to be done constitutionally. Shouldn't be any problem. And here's the models. On the creation side, we would teach origin by design. On the evolution side, we would teach natural origin. On the evolution side, we would teach decreasing order. That is, God made things good in the beginning, and as a result of the curse and natural processes, it's deteriorated since then. If anything, things are smaller, they don't live as long as they did in the early days. On the evolution side, increasing order. You got to get from molecules to man. You got to get from slime to Shakespeare. On the creation side, catastrophism, that is, the flood, the curse. These big things made the geological formations fairly quickly, not over millions of years. On the evolution side, uniformitarian gradualism, that is, Lyell. Slowly, gradually, over millions of years, little bit by little bit, processes just like what are happening today, made the great formations that we see out there, just long periods of time. Now, folks, for the next 2 days, this is what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about the evidence for that left-hand model, the design model, and I'm going to talk about some of the difficulties with that right-hand model. That's what we're going to do. Tomorrow we're going to hone in on this first point, and then Sunday morning, this second point, and Sunday evening, this third point. That's basically what I'm going to spend the bulk of my time on. Today was history. This is what we're going to go over the next couple of days. Okay? Here is Cornell evolutionist William Provine. Quote, I have a suggestion for evolutionists. Include the discussion of supernatural origins in your classes. The exclusionism you promote is painfully self-serving and smacks of elitism. Why are you afraid of confronting the supernatural creationism believed by the majority of persons in the USA and perhaps worldwide? Shouldn't students be encouraged to express their beliefs about origins in a class discussing origins by evolution? I think it's a great point. I think it's a great point. Why are they afraid of it? Are they afraid that maybe their fairy tale won't stand up to some competition? So, well, that's kind of nasty. You call it a fairy tale. It's not very polite. Well, actually, I think it's a very apt description of evolutionary theory. At least this broad metaphysical evolutionary theory as we look at it in the origins debate. Do you remember the fairy tale that I started tonight's presentation with? The fairy tale of the frog. And along comes the beautiful princess, kisses the frog, and the frog turns into the prince, right? Well, that is a fairy tale for children. Frog plus kiss. The kiss is the magic ingredient, right? The kiss is so wonderful. What's the magic ingredient? It turns the frog into a prince, right? That's a fairy tale we tell kids, and kids love it. Well, I would present to you that evolution is a fairy tale for grown-ups. And it goes like this. Frog plus time equals the prince. The magic ingredient isn't the kiss. The magic ingredient is millions and millions of years. You don't believe me? This comes out of a textbook right there. There's the frog, and there's your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandpapa. All right? And so, yeah, supposedly we came from an amphibian, something like a froggy fellow. Here's Jean Rostand. He is a member of the French Academy of Sciences. He says, evolution's a fairy tale for grown-ups. Here is Henry G. He's chief editor of Nature magazine. He says, to take a line of fossils and claim they represent a lineage is not a scientific hypothesis that can be tested, but an assertion that carries the same validity as a bedtime story. Amusing, perhaps even instructive, but not scientific. Bedtime story, fairy tale, these are evolutionists that are describing it, not me. National opinion, 86% of Americans believe creation should be taught alongside evolution. Even lawyers, bless their heart, by 2-to-1 margins say it's constitutional. So why aren't we teaching it? Here's Stephen Jay Gould again, Harvard University, evolutionist. No statute exists in any state to bar instruction in creation science. It could be taught before, can be taught now. As I told you, teachers can teach it if they want to. There's nothing in the law that says they can't. Even the Supreme Court, in their Edwards versus Aguilar decision, said this: teaching a variety of scientific theories about the origins of mankind to school children might be done with the clear secular, in other words, non-religious, secular intent of enhancing the effectiveness of science instruction. So they particularly allowed it. But it has to be secular. You can't say, well, let's turn to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. And I get that. Okay? If I wouldn't want the imam going into the public schools and teaching the Quran using my tax dollars. So I understand that. I get that. I mean, we're a long way from the Christian society we were founded to be, but there's no reason why we can't teach design and leave it at that. And then let the children make their own decisions after that. So here's my conclusion. Public schools should not be the forum for religious presentations, secular humanism included. However, there are two legitimate model of origins that can be presented without establishing religion. Besides, we should not teach error simply because the truth might have moral implications. All the scientific evidence supporting both creation and evolution should be presented so students can reach their own conclusions. True science and true learning demand nothing less. Now, I get asked sometimes, what can I do? I'm not a science teacher. What can I do down here in Goldsboro, North Carolina? Here's a book. You might want to jot down the name of the book, Case for a Creator. I have donated this book to every public school library in the town where I live. Somebody should do it in Goldsboro. Somebody should do it in surrounding towns. If you live there, you can go in and say, hey, I support this town with my tax dollars. Can I please, I would like to make a contribution to the library here at this school. That would be a great book to give. It approaches this idea of origins strictly from an evidence perspective. But if you get all the way to the back, he does have a plan of salvation in the back. He is a Christian, but he approaches it pretty much just like I just suggested. Evidence, life can't beget, or non-life can't beget life, fine-tuned universe, and some of these things we're going to talk about more tomorrow night with the 5 questions for evolutionists. Matthew 5:13 says, "Ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt hath lost its savor, wherewith shall it be salted? It's thenceforth good for nothing but to be cast out and trodden under the foot of men." Folks, it's our job to be salt in this world. Are you being salt right here? I'd like to suggest that every one of us is here for a purpose. God could have taken us to heaven right after we died, but he left you here and me here to have an impact. Have you invited somebody to the meetings? It's not too late. Get a hold of somebody tomorrow. Sometimes people will come to meetings to hear a scientist that might not come to hear a preacher. Now that's too bad, but that's the reality. And if you can get them to come, say, hey, this is crazy guy. He's talking about dinosaurs. He loves science. He's talking about creation, evolution. Come on out. I'd love to invite you on out. That might be a little bit less intimidating than having somebody thump the Bible and preach about heaven and hell. But guess what? As you saw, I will get the Bible verses in, and I will end every night with a bit of a challenge. Tonight, my challenge is for you guys. Come tomorrow and invite a friend. Invite someone that maybe likes dinosaurs. Got any Dino Daves out? Go ahead and grab some of the invitations. I know they got the back there. Invite someone. Folks, life is short. We're engaged in a war. It's a war for the souls of men. You're left here for a reason. You're to have an impact. Don't just sit there. Go ahead and give out some of those books. Case for the Creator. Go ahead and give out some of these tracts. Come on up, grab some. They're free. People that are evolutionists, atheists, have some in your Bible. See, to hand out. Here's another tract. This one is, did dinosaurs coexist with man? Well, that's a thought-provoking question. People are curious. Well, guess what? On the back's the gospel plan of salvation. Grab some of these. Anybody you know who likes science and dinosaurs, but they're not saved, give them one. Okay? So these are some tools. The burden of Pastor Rush, John, and the others to invite me in here was to be able to help you, to arm you. So, I mean, we got a needy community around about us, right? And you guys are calling a new pastor. What would be more exciting for a new pastor to come and to see a church that's excited about reaching the community for Jesus Christ? Do you have people that you're trying to reach for Christ? Can I tell you something? I live in East Concord, and I've lived there for over 10 years. I haven't led a single person to the Lord yet in my neighborhood. That bothers me. I have a list. There's people we're inviting over for the explicit reason of building a relationship to be able to hopefully get them to church because we love them and we want to see them saved. We don't want to see them go to hell. My daughter is able to lead a neighborhood girl to the Lord. My wife was able to lead a lady across the street to the Lord, and before she had to go to the hospital. And I've not let anybody. I've tried. We've got some to come to church, and we had some come to a Bible study, and we're trying. But I cry out to the Lord, and it bothers me. Does it bother you that there are people around about you going to hell? Do you have a burden? It's not Pastor Dwayne's job. It's not the new pastor's job. It's not Brother John's job. It's not the church leadership. It is all of us' job. That's why we're here. I hope you have a burden. I hope you're thinking of someone you can invite out. I hope you have a mission, a spiritual mission, and aren't just kind of bobbing along and surviving, picking daisies while a battle's going on and people are dying and going to hell. Let's realize, guys, Satan has had control of our schools. Satan has had control of our government. Satan has had control of our neighborhoods long enough. It's time for us to do something, to get active, to get on board for the sake of Jesus Christ. Let's close in prayer.